Welcome to our Projects in iOS course from Eduonics. My name is Brett. In this lesson, we're going to go ahead and start creating our application. All right, so I'm going to go ahead into Xcode and do File New. We're going to do a new project. And so it's going to be a single view application. And so for the name, I'm going to do App 1. And you can leave your organization or your organization identifier. You can change it to whatever you want. I'm going to go with the universal app, and Swift is my language. We are going to use core data. So this is where all of our categories and questions and answers are going to go into core data. So I'll do next, and we'll give this a place. So that's where I'll put it. And here's our application. All right, so let's see here. We have assets, XC assets for Xcode assets. We can just drag all those images in there now. So if I go over here, we have all of our different images, and I'll just highlight those, drag that over. There we are. So now we can make use of all these images. And what we're going to do now is work on our data model. So let's click on XC Data Model D. And there we are. We're going to create several entities, and then we're going to add the attributes. So what we want are categories. We want answers and questions. Those are going to be the entities. I'm going to go ahead and create those. And the naming conventions, we're going to have capital letters starting, and we're going to end with an S. Whoops, I don't want presidents. I want categories. And I'll create another entity for questions and one more for answers. Okay, so we can add the attributes. I'll start with the categories. That's the topmost. And in here, we are going to have three. We're going to have category name. We'll have an ID for each category and an image name. So here I can click the plus. Let's see, what is this complaint? Categories attribute must have a defined type. All right, so I guess it added it, and I don't know, I didn't see it. So we're going to have category name. This is going to be a string. Add another. So this is going to be an ID, and that'll just be an integer 16. Then we'll have image name. That is going to be a string. That takes care of categories. Now we can work on questions. So here we're going to have the correct answer. It's going to be a number. We'll have the ID. So each question will have its ID. We'll have the category ID, and then we'll have answer choices. So I will add correct answer. And then that's going to be an integer 16. We'll have next an ID. That's an integer 16. Then we can do category ID. So this points back to what category is my question in. And then we'll have, finally, the answer choices. There's going to be a string, because what we're going to do is just create a comma delimited string. Actually, I want a string of integers, which are going to be the answer choices that are going to be associated to this question. And then we work with splitting those up and making an array out of them later on. All right, so now we have answers. And in here, we're going to have an ID. We're going to have a question ID to associate what question does this go with. Then we'll have a category ID, so that helps with pulling out answers by category if we want that, for example. And then, of course, the answer text. So ID, and that's just an ID for each answer. Next, we'll have category ID, and that's going to be an integer. Then we'll have answer. That's going to be a string. All right, so that takes care of our data model. And let's see. If we go into the app delegate, you can see we'll have a bunch of core data entry of code here. So It's not something we're going to really need to worry about, but just when you're adding a core data application, you can see the differences there with an application that doesn't have core data, for example. All right, so if we open up our scenes, we should be able to start seeing something here. So this is our main scene. Now what we want is this is not going to be the scene we're going to use. What we're going to do is we need a navigation controller, so we'll have navigation at the top. So to create that, we're going to go to Editor and embed in navigation. Actually, I don't want a tab. I want a navigation controller. So embed in. Need to click on my view controller on this one here. Now we can go embed in navigation controller. So if I zoom out on this, we can see what's going on. So we have our navigation controller, which you don't see, but you'll notice it is the entry point, that arrow right there. Now we have our first scene, our first actual scene here. And we can go ahead and drag in another view controller, which is going to be the one for our detail view. So I'll just drop that in right there. And that's that. So if we start this up, I'm going to go into an iPhone 5. We can just make sure everything's running and working. I like to periodically run the app and build the app and make sure I haven't backed myself down into some strange odd error. All right, so let's see. There we are. So there's not much to it. You can't really navigate away from this or anything right now. So that is the basics of the app. Next, we're going to start working on adding our table view on this first one, and also creating a segue into our second one, and then start adding some of the UI elements. So we're going to begin adding UI to this based on our mockups, and then we can start working on the functionality.